let's talk first about your family's legacy here in the legal profession. Your great-grandfather, was he the solicitor for the very circuit that we're in?
Yes, sir.
And what was his name?
Randolph Murdaugh Sr.
Your grandfather, who was that?
Randolph Murdaugh Jr.
What did he go by?
Buster. That's who Buster is named after.
Is he solicitor?
Granddad. Yes, sir. He was the solicitor for 46 years. Longest serving prosecutor in the country.
And then your father, Mr. Randolph, he became solicitor not long after that. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. My family's been a central part of the legal community. Yes, sir. I agree with that.
And not only just a central part of the legal community, but the chief prosecutor for this area since 1910, I think, up until 2006.
1920.
1920.
2006. 1910 is when my great-grandfather started the law firm.
The law firm.
Yes, sir.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Exposed Scandalous Files of the Elite. I am your host, Jim Chapman, and we are going to jump right into today's episode. This is the second episode in the Murdaugh series. And when we left you last, Paul Murdaugh was in a shitload of trouble. He was charged finally criminally in the death of Mallory Beach during that boat crash near Beaufort, South Carolina. And before we go any further into our story, it's important to tell you about the history of the Murdaugh family, the power that this family yielded in South Carolina in the legal realm is absolutely staggering. They were a legal dynasty, to be sure. And we're going to tell you all about that today. And I'm going to reference probably the best article ever written on the history of the Murdaughs, how they got that money back in the 2000s when Alex Murdaugh started running things in South Carolina, but also where their legal dynasty started. And the state.com is the article I'm referencing here. And they are the kind of like the state newspaper for South Carolina. So let's get into it. And this particular expose was written in September of 2021. And it says the night 19-year-old Mallory Beach died in a boat crash near Beaufort, South Carolina. Investigators arrived at the hospital to interview two teens suspected of driving the boat drunk. The father and grandfather of one suspect suddenly showed up, telling officers they were lawyers. They stopped all interviews and prevented teens from taking any sobriety tests. The father and grandfather were not average citizens. They were members of one of the most powerful legal families in South Carolina. They were the Murdaughs. For nearly a century, the Murdaugh name has stood for three things throughout South Carolina: power, justice, and big money. 3 generations of Murdaughs have been state prosecutors, putting thousands of people in prison and sending more than a dozen to death row in a 5-county, low-lying region of swamps, Spanish moss, and forest where moonshiners once had a thriving trade, and year after year, the family law firm in Hampton has won millions of dollars in civil lawsuits, relentlessly pursuing those at fault in fatal collisions. But in an odd twist of fate, 4 members of the Murdaugh dynasty are now implicated in the fatal boat crash, exposing the youngest to possible criminal charges, and 2 other generations to civil liability. The powerful family is in the spotlight like never before. It started like this. On a cold, foggy February night in a creek near Beaufort, a 17-foot Triton boat slammed into a piling below a bridge that connects to the main entrance to the U.S. Marine Base at Parris Island. All 6 passengers between 18 and 20 years old were ejected. 1 never made it back to shore. The body of 19-year-old Mallory Beach, carried away by tides and currents, was found 7 days later in a marsh 5 miles from the crash site. The coroner said she received a blow to the head from the crash and then drowned. The 5 survivors were described as grossly intoxicated, a police report said, but none were given sobriety tests, the lack of which has sparked outrage and questions in the community. The boat is owned by Alex Murdaugh, 50, who is a 4th-generation member of the Dynasty, partner in a law firm and part-time prosecutor for the 14th Circuit that covers Allendale, Beaufort, Colleton, Hampton, and Jasper counties. Alex Murdaugh's son, 19-year-old Paul Murdaugh, is the possible driver. A video posted to social media appears to show him driving at some point during the night. And y'all, there's no dispute anymore over that. Connor Cook, 19, was also named as a possible driver. Of course, he was not. Paul Murdaugh was driving that boat. The case is now being investigated by the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources, known as DNR. Paul Murdaugh's father and grandfather, former Chief Prosecutor Randolph Murdaugh III, are the ones who went to the hospital that night and prevented the teens from cooperating with law enforcement. That, according to DNR Captain Robert McCullough. Now, before we go any further, while that may be true, I do want to say any attorney is going to advise people in the same situation as the people in that boat not to say anything to the police without attorneys being present. Just saying. And of course, I'm not defending any of what they did, but that's the way it's written in this article. It would kind of lead you to believe that was a bunch of shady shit going on. And it certainly was in the Murdaughs case. They're trying to protect their son, but any attorney, whether they had any relation to anyone in that case or not, would say, you don't say anything to the police without us being present. So that's not irregular, is what I'm getting at. Paul Murdaugh has since retained 2 high-profile criminal lawyers, Jim Griffin and Senator Dick Harpootlian. Let me say that again, y'all. Senator Dick Harpootlian. Now, you know you're powerful when your lawyer is a senator. Connor Cook has retained attorney Joe McCullough of Columbia. None of them will comment. Meanwhile, the young woman's mother, Renee Beach, filed a wrongful death lawsuit against 3 other members of the Murdaugh family for turning a blind eye to the underage drinking, as she should have. Paul Murdaugh is referred to in the lawsuit, but not mentioned by name. His older brother, father, and grandfather are, however. The Murdaughs had no comment about the lawsuit or the boat crash and its aftermath. The family firm issued a blanket statement for all questions about the boating incident, saying, our thoughts and prayers have and will continue to go out to the Beach family and all families and friends affected by this tragedy. This marks the second time that this small rural community is left to wonder what really happened to one of its young people and whether justice will be served. The case of 19-year-old Stephen Smith is often mentioned in the same sentence on social media. In July 2015, the young man's body was found in the middle of the Hampton County roadway with his head bashed in. Investigators reported he was the victim of a hit-and-run accident, despite police reports showing no evidence that ever took place. Sandy Smith, the young man's mother, said the boat crash brought renewed focus to her son's death, but some questions may never be answered. And y'all, get ready. I have literally over 500 documents from the Stephen Smith case, and that's going to be a part of this series, and it's coming up very, very soon. So I continue with this article. There would never be justice for Stephen in Hampton County, she said. No evidence links the Murdaugh family to the case, and the Murdaughs declined to comment on discussions about their family post on social media, calling it an outlet for unfortunate fabrications and unfounded comments based not on fact, but on speculation. And we'll get into a little bit of the history of the Murdaugh family. In the 1920s and 30s, the family namesake and first generation Randolph Murdaugh was both a lawyer in private practice and the solicitor. And y'all, For those who don't know what a solicitor is, if you don't live in a state that they call them solicitors. For example, Louisiana, we call them district attorneys. They're basically the top prosecutor in that county. In South Carolina's case, we don't have counties, we have parishes here in Louisiana, but they're the ones that make the decision whether to prosecute. The police arrest you and they pursue charges against you. They go to the district attorney and they say, here's all our evidence. Do you think you have enough evidence to prosecute this person? And the district attorney or solicitor makes that decision. They are very, very powerful people. Think about it. They basically decide if someone's going to be pursued on criminal charges or not. So I continue. He oversaw prosecutions in Hampton, Jasper, Beaufort, Colleton, and Allendale counties in the state's southeast corner. However, in the early morning hours of July 19th, 1940, Randolph Murdaugh climbed into his car after a night of playing cards and he set out for home. But according to reports, he didn't get far. And to tell you a little bit about what happened there that they know, folks, around 1 a.m. that night, he was returning home and his car mysteriously stopped at a railroad crossing. And within minutes, a freight train slammed into his car, killing him instantly. He was 59 years old. Now, the driver of the train, the engineer, mind you, said that he saw Murdaugh on the tracks and Murdaugh starts waving at him as the train is speeding towards him. And that train slammed into his car so hard that Murdaugh Sr.'s lifeless body was found 150 feet away from the crossing. And many historians, they've wondered if the death was an alcohol-related death or possibly a suicide, but of course, no way to prove either theory because he's dead. And his death was eventually ruled an accident. And that's some pretty rare information you just got right there on the original Murdaugh. And trains slamming into people, it comes into play big time as we go on in the story today. After Murdaugh Sr.'s death, his son and Alex Murdaugh's grandfather, Randolph Buster Murdaugh Jr., he became the new solicitor. He basically took over for his father. And, as you would imagine, the Murdaugh family sued the railroad company over that incident. Murdaugh Jr., he asked for $100,000 from that railroad company, according to court records from September of 1941. And in 1941, $100,000, y'all, was equivalent to $2 million in today's money. The case was privately settled, and Murdaugh Jr. received an amount of money, but it was never disclosed. So ever since then, sudden deaths and injuries have been a part of the Murdaugh legal DNA, and so is the money. Over the years, the Murdaughs and their law firm have raked in millions suing corporations, governments, and individuals who kill or injure others. Today, the firm's sprawling 3-story brick headquarters in the heart of downtown Hampton, South Carolina, is often referred to as the house that CSX built. And that is kind of a quip, y'all, referring to the millions the firm has won suing CSX, which is a railroad company. The little town of Hampton, which has a population of just 2,000, seems an unlikely spot for a legal juggernaut. Generations of close-knit families have worshiped together in its churches, raised chickens in modest homes, and they celebrate at the annual Watermelon Festival, which is pretty much the highlight of the town, and about the only time a parking spot is, difficult to find in Hampton County. About 20 miles from the closest interstate makes Hampton County not exactly an attractant for big business. It's a sleepy town named for a Confederate general, and a cookware distribution center as well as a federal prison that is among the top county employers. But it's in this quiet town that the Murdaughs have flourished. The family firm has grown to 70 employees, including 11 partners and 5 associates. In 2004, a national public interest group named Hampton County the third biggest judicial hellhole for defendants in the United States, citing the success of Murdaugh's law firm. In 2005, the legislature changed the law concerning where lawsuits can be filed. They started limiting plaintiffs from other parts of South Carolina from suing in Hampton County, because what was happening was the Murdaugh law firm had such a reputation, especially if you were like in a car accident or especially a train accident, that people from all the way on the other side of South Carolina were having the Murdaughs represent them, even though they were in a totally different part of the state. But it didn't stop people. They just started moving to Hampton County if they had to give the Murdaughs to represent them. The firm declined to give its yearly totals of its verdicts and settlements. They're in the hundreds of millions of dollars, y'all, but some results are prominently displayed on the firm's website, or were during this article anyway. They include Randy Murdaugh IV, who is the great-grandson of the original Murdaugh and partner of the firm, displaying on the walls of the law firm 250 cases by himself at the tune of $1 million minimum each. So Randy Murdaugh IV alone, $250 million plus in verdicts. And it is a known fact that he had numerous cases worth $10 million or more in verdicts. And y'all, lawyers get about 30% of that on average. So you do the math. A spokesman said the firm's lawsuits have saved lives. Railroads now routinely clear vegetation around railroad crossings so people can see oncoming trains. And a lot of people in the town, this is very important to mention, they supported the Murdaughs. The Murdaughs did a lot for the community, and the Murdaugh law firm, when I say Murdaughs, I'm saying the entire law firm. They did tons for the community, and they were honored. In South Carolina, for example, the success of the big money cases the Murdaughs and their firm had and were able to successfully sue these large corporations. The governor, a guy by the name of Henry McMaster, awarded 79-year-old Randolph Murdaugh III, Alex Murdaugh's father and Paul's grandfather, with the Order of the Palmetto. Now, that is the state's highest civilian honor, y'all, for his work as attorney and his 19 years as solicitor. And in June of 2021, Murdaugh III was the Grand Marshal of the town's Watermelon Festival, which I told you about earlier. Now, in addition to all that, the Murdaughs, they were pretty, I guess you could say, politically savvy. They spent more than $200,000 on state and local politics in the last decade, and the law firm had donated $87,000 to political action committees, legal PACs. More than a dozen lawyers interviewed by the local papers have praised the Murdaugh law firm, saying its lawyers are well respected with influence throughout the state. Now, some do claim the Murdaugh name had hurt Hampton County's chances to lure big business. Years ago, Walmart was planning to open in Hampton County, but the big box store was warned if the plans were completed, the Murdaugh law firm would be able to sue over alleged incidents that happened anywhere in South Carolina. So Walmart was like, screw that. We don't want to mess with the Murdaughs. That's how powerful the Murdaughs were in South Carolina. So let's get a little more into Buster Murdaugh, Randolph Buster Murdaugh Jr., who took over after his father either got hit by a train or committed suicide. If he's waving at the engineer, I'm thinking he committed suicide, but then the engineer could be lying because he thought he might get in trouble. I don't know. But Randolph Buster Murdaugh became solicitor in 1940 following the death of his father, and he was well known across South Carolina for his love of chewing tobacco, his courtroom prowess, and his flair for acting out murders before spellbound juries. He was a legend, a bigger-than-life presence, recalls Columbia defense attorney Jack Swerling, who battled Buster Murdaugh Jr. in criminal trials. He had a booming voice that could cycle through the range of human emotions, outrage, ridicule, and grief. And like a master, he can make juries' imaginations run wild with the horror of the crime. And he used an example in this article, y'all. And he said once in a murder case, he drew an imaginary box with his fingers in front of the jury box. And he said, "This is where Johnny is laying in his grave right now." And when the jury came back with the guilty verdict, get this, they all avoided stepping out onto that imaginary box that Buster had drawn. Talk about luring in a jury, right? Now, for all of that, the guy who competed against him, Swirling, said that, his ethics weren't always the best. He did a lot of things in his closing arguments that you're not supposed to do as a defense attorney. He didn't go into a lot of it, but he was damn good at what he did. He actually sent 14 men to death row. Now, for all of that, Buster Murdaugh Jr., he once found himself in criminal trouble. In June of 1956, he was indicted by a federal grand jury for allegedly telling a local bootlegger to move his whiskey still to nearby Colleton County so he wouldn't be arrested by local police. So he tipped the guy off, right? He resigned his post for several months until a jury acquitted him of the charges, and he managed to continue holding that position soon after. The law firm appears to ignore those several months that Buster Murdaugh was out of the office and facing criminal charges. It cites the Murdaugh family's 85 consecutive years as solicitor of the 14th Circuit, touting it as one of the longest consecutive terms for a family holding that office in the country. Buster Murdaugh Jr. also had a reputation as a law and order solicitor, but several Hampton County residents told the state that he could also look the other way. As a little girl, I remember Daddy saying, "Go to Buster Murdaugh. He'll make it disappear." It was always that good old boy system, said a woman who's had deep roots in Hampton County who agreed to speak on the condition of anonymity because she was in fear of retribution. In 1969, a South Carolina blue law prohibited sporting events on Sunday, but a much anticipated golf tournament known as the Heritage had already been scheduled at Hilton Head Island. Murdaugh Jr. vowed to look the other way and allowed the inaugural tournament to continue. Buster Murdaugh, who was solicitor 46 years, died in 1998 at the age of 83. There's no telling what he might think about the scrutiny his descendants are facing. And let me give you a little bit of a timeline of this family. In 1910, Randolph Murdaugh started that law firm in Hampton County, South Carolina. It would later become Peters, Murdaugh, Parker, Eldrick, and Dietrich. In 1920, Randolph Murdaugh is elected to the 14th Circuit as a solicitor, becoming the first person to hold the post since it became an elected position. In 1940, 20 years later, Randolph Murdaugh was killed in a train wreck. He was succeeded by his son, Randolph Buster Murdaugh Jr., who also ran the family law firm. In 1956, Randolph Buster Murdaugh Jr. was indicted for tipping off a local bootlegger. He resigned for several months until he was acquitted. Then, from 56 to 86, he's rocking and rolling, right? And in 1986, he retires as the solicitor and was succeeded by his son, Randolph Murdaugh III, Alex's father. And in 2005, Randolph Murdaugh III, he decides he's not going to seek re-election, instead focusing on his family's law firm full-time. He remained a paid part-time assistant solicitor, and his son, Alex Murdaugh, became a volunteer solicitor, helping his dad prosecute cases. And in 2018, Governor Henry McMaster, he awards Randolph Murdaugh III with the Order of the Palmetto, the state's highest civilian honor. And in 2019, 4 members of the Murdaugh family are implicated in a fatal boat crash, exposing one member being Paul Murdaugh, to possible criminal charges and the others to civil liability. And so I told you I was going to tell you a little bit about Dick Harpootlian, which Senator Dick Harpootlian, he was representing Paul Murdaugh. Now that these criminal charges have come out, he attended Clemson University for his undergraduate studies, and he received his law degree from the University of South Carolina in 1974. Harpootlian began his legal career with the Fifth Circuit Solicitor's Office in South Carolina. And in 1983, this is very interesting, he earned his conviction, and he kind of became a national celebrity for the prosecution of Donald Pee Wee Gaskins, South Carolina's most notorious serial killer. And of course, another podcast I'm involved with called Real Life, Real Crime, Woody Overton actually did an episode just a month ago, I think it was, on Pee Wee Gaskins. Well, Harpootlian, who represented Paul Murdaugh and also represented and still continues to represent Alex Murdaugh, was the prosecutor of Pee Wee Gaskins. Gaskins was sentenced to death and later executed. Just weeks prior to his execution, Gaskins attempted to have Harpootlian's young daughter kidnapped and held hostage. The plot was thwarted by law enforcement when they received a tip from one of those that Gaskins had recruited. In 1983, Harpootlian went into the private practice with the nationally renowned criminal defense lawyer, Jack Swerling. He and Swerling had a partnership known as Swerling and Harpootlian until January of 1991. Now, in 1990, Harpootlian was elected as the Fifth Circuit Solicitor, and he served from 1991 until 1995. In 1991, Mr. Harpootlian prosecuted and convicted ex-University of South Carolina President Jim Holderman for public corruption charges arising from abuse of his office for personal gain. Harpootlian has also been a fixture in South Carolina politics for much of his career. He was a member of the Richland County Council from 86 to 1991, as well as chairman of the South Carolina Democratic Party from 1998 to 2003, and again from 2011 to 2013. And in 2018, he was elected to the state Senate, where he still currently serves. And that is Dick Harpootlian. You talk about powerful. And to tell you a little bit about Alex Murdaugh, who we've mentioned in this entire series really centers around as we go on. Alex Murdaugh was born in 1968 to Randolph Murdaugh III and his wife Libby. He graduated from Wade Hampton High School and continued his studies at the University of South Carolina. He received a bachelor's in English and speech communications and got his law degree in 1994. He married Margaret Maggie Kennedy Brandstetter in 1993, and they had two sons, Buster, named after his grandfather, obviously, and Paul. After graduating from law school, he practiced for a short time at Moss & Kuhn in Beaufort before joining his family practice in Hampton. So that's a little history on the power of this family. And as I mentioned in that article, shortly after that boat crash, a civil lawsuit blaming Alex Murdaugh, Alex Murdaugh's father, Paul's grandfather, right? And Parker's Corporation, which was the company that sold Paul Murdaugh the alcohol. They got into a big fight with Mallory Beach's family in this lawsuit. And let me tell you, the person that Mallory Beach hired, and we'll talk about him in subsequent episodes, but he was probably, for Alex Murdaugh and the Murdaugh family, the worst case scenario for them, because he was a lawyer who was not at all intimidated by the Murdaughs. I mean, he has some swagger with him. And we're going to get into him in subsequent episodes. But just to tell you where, at this point in time, at this point in our story, the lawsuits are going on against several individuals. Mallory Beach, her family is rightfully suing these people, and Paul Murdaugh is up for trial. Stress all over the place, right? Now, something happens that really throws sort of a monkey wrench in the plans to criminally prosecute Paul Murdaugh. Now, there was a twist of fate, if you will, in the Paul Murdaugh case as it was preparing to go for trial. And that was the South Carolina cop. There was one cop who named Paul Murdaugh as the driver in that fatal boat crash. Well, he gets fired, and he got fired for alleged drug use. He was the only Beaufort County, South Carolina deputy who identified Paul Murdaugh as the driver in that boat crash. And his name was Deputy Stephen Domino. Now, he was accused of unlawful use of controlled substances and of making false or misleading statements to a law enforcement agency. So basically, they heard he was doing drugs. They asked him about it, and he said, hell no, I'm not doing drugs. And they had evidence of it, apparently. So Deputy Domino, he collected essential information in the aftermath of that boat crash. But the firing caused some major issues in his credibility. Because if you get fired for drug use and then you go on the stand and you're saying that, you know, Paul Murdaugh was the driver and you were told this by several people, well, Paul Murdaugh's defense, Harpootlian, right? He's going to go up to you and he's going to say, were you on drugs when they told you that? Because you were fired for drugs. So your credibility is shot. It really hurts your case. Doesn't mean it wouldn't be prosecuted. It just makes it a lot harder for the plaintiffs. So life's going on. Lawsuits are being filed everywhere. And Paul Murdaugh is in a world of shit. Then on June 7th of 2021, this happens. And I want you to listen to it through its completion.
Hampton County 911, where's your emergency?
This is Alec Murdaugh at 4147 Moselle Road. I need the police and the ambulance immediately. My wife and child are shot badly.
Okay, you said 4147 Moselle Road in Arlington?
Sir?
You said 4147 Moselle Road in Arlington?
Yes, sir. 4147
Okay.
Moselle Road.
Stay on the line with me, okay?
Hurry.
Yes, sir. Stay on the line with me, okay?
Yes. Hello?
I'm still here. Stay on the line. I'm still here, okay? Carlton, I have an Alex Murdaugh on the line, caller from 4147 Moselle Road. He's advising that his wife and child was shot. Mr. Murdaugh, go ahead and talk to Carlton.
It's 4147 Moselle Road. I've been up to it now. It's bad.
Okay.
Collier County Communications.
Carlton, I have an Alex Murdaugh on the line, caller from 4147 Moselle Road. He's advising that his wife and child was shot.
Okay, and sir, give me the address again.
It's 4147 Moselle Road. I've been up to it now. It's bad.
Okay. Okay, and are they breathing?
No, ma'am.
Okay, and you said it's your wife and your son?
My wife and my son.
Are they in a vehicle?
No, ma'am. They're on the ground out at my kennels.
Okay, and did you see anyone? Okay, is he breathing at all?
No, nobody.
Is she? Okay, do you see anything? Do you see anyone in the area?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
What color is your house on the outside? What color is your house on the outside?
It's white. You can't see it from the road.
Okay, is it a house or a mobile home?
It's a house.
Okay, and what is your name?
My name is Alex Murdaugh.
Okay, and did you hear anything, or did you come home and find them?
No, man, I've been gone. I just came back.
Okay, and was anyone else supposed to be at your house?
No, ma'am. Please hurry.
We're getting somebody out there to you.
Oh. Oh, man. Oh.
Okay, what is her name?
Maggie and Paul.
Maggie is her name?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And please hurry.
We're getting somebody out there to you. Me asking you these questions don't slow them down, okay? And you sure they're not breathing? Is he moving at all, your son? I know you said that she was shot, but what about your son?
Nobody's. They're not. Neither one of them's moving.
What is your telephone number? And does anything look out of place?
Ma'am, not particularly, really, no, ma'am.
Okay. Okay.
All right, I'm going back down there. Are they close, ma'am?
Yeah, they've been en route with you ever since you've got on the phone with me. I have multiple people coming out there to you. Okay, can you do me a favor, Mr. Murdaugh, and turn on the flashers on your car so that way they can see where the kennels are?
21. Central Zone out Station 1A. You will need Station 15.
Do you have your flashers on for me, Mr. Murdaugh?
Yes.
Okay. I don't want you to touch them at all, okay? I don't know if you've already touched them, but I don't want you to touch them just in case they can get any kind of evidence, okay?
I'd already touched them trying to get to see if they were breathing.
Okay. Well, I just don't want you to move anything just in case they can get any kind of evidence, okay?
Oh. Ma'am, I'm going to call. I need to call some of my family.
Okay. Well, do me a favor for me. Whenever you see the officer or the medics, because they're all coming to you.
Absolutely.
Okay. But we have them come in, turn on the flashes on your vehicle so they can see you, okay? You got the flashers on for me?
I do.
Okay. All right. Just whenever you see them.
Okay.
How old is your son?
22.
Okay. All right. We're getting them out there to you, okay?
And I will answer if you call.
All right.
Now, we're going to get into it on the next episode. Maggie Murdaugh and Paul Murdaugh get killed at the Murdaugh home. And before we get out of here for today, I want to thank everybody for listening. And I want to say just a couple of things. We're going to be dropping episodes in force coming up. My goal is to drop an episode every Monday of the Murdaugh series and then follow that up with a regular episode of Exposed at some point during the same week. That is my goal. That's a lot of work, and I'm going to push it, see what I can do. What I can tell you is that you will get an episode this upcoming Tuesday that will actually be a regular episode of Exposed, not related to this series. And then you'll get another series episode of the Murdaughs shortly thereafter. I'm also dropping a bonus episode on Monday just for Patreon members. So if you're a Patreon member, look for that. I think you'll like it. If you're not a Patreon member, check us out. We'd love to have your support. There's several different tiers, and you get several different things depending on what tier you sign up for. If you can't be a patron, I totally get it. I totally understand. I love you. Everybody, if you like this podcast, I'm begging you to leave a review. We go almost nowhere without reviews being frequently left for this show. So thank you so much to those who have done so. If you have not done so, I would so appreciate it if you could leave a review. The next episode, y'all, is going to absolutely blow your mind. I can't wait to get it to you. And for Exposed, Scandalous Files of the Elite, I'm your host, Jim Chapman. Much love.